couldn't make it onto the call because we have quite a big group. Wow, I'm just so happy you're here. I want to ask, what do you do during quarantine, during COVID, while all the events are down? Or do you do a lot of Zoom events, or how are you keeping the message going around right now?
Well, at first it was really quiet. Like before March of last year, my calendar was booked up with in-person stuff mostly until the end of October. It was super busy. And then quarantine happened, lockdown happened, and everything stopped, right? Like it was just like gone. And it was the first time in a really long time that I didn't have anything to do. I think a lot of us felt that way, right? Like I'm not alone in that. It was weird. But it started to pick up again, especially this year. It's getting really busy. I'm doing probably one or two sort of event type things like this a week, on top of everything else. So yeah. And then I'm writing, and I'm going to school, and I'm parenting, and all those other things that a lot of us are doing. Just juggle, Yeah.
That's amazing. What's the next writing project?
I'm working on another book. Yeah. So it's almost like a sequel, but it's not a sequel, because this is a story like with a beginning and an end, if you will. I mean, obviously things are still going. We're a family, right? But like that particular story has been told. This is more so. I don't know how many of you follow me online, but I had a pretty significant breakdown last year in May. And as a result of that, I wound up at the hospital. And as a result of that, I got a diagnosis of trauma, complex PTSD. And so that sort of, I learned so much about myself, and I learned a lot about like, why have I had anxiety my entire life and nothing that I've done has really helped it? Why have traditional therapies not worked for me, like traditional talk therapy, because I've been in it so many times, right? And I also, have bouts of depression, or had bouts of depression. So a lot of that was happening in my life, and I was coping the best I could. The diagnosis of trauma allowed me to really figure out what was going on, and then be able to get better. I was actually able to get better, as better as I guess I could get. So I'm writing about that, and about how a lot of people are walking around with an underlying condition that they don't even know they have. We just don't talk about it enough. So yeah.
Oh, that is so needed right now. So needed.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of people with trauma diagnoses too, coming out of this pandemic for a number of reasons. Caregivers, healthcare workers, that sort of thing. And I just want to speak to the fact that people are not alone, and it is the most lonely feeling in the world when you're triggered and you're struggling and people don't get it. It's a really hard thing. So yeah.
I'm really excited to hear that you're writing that, Amanda, because I'm actually a therapist who works specifically with CPTSD.
Wow. Oh, that's not funny. Yeah.
So I, as I was reading your book already, one of my comments that I have written here is like, I really like that you made the psychoeducation so relatable. You had clearly reflected on and integrated so much of your story, probably not just before writing it, but most likely in the process of writing it. So just how you already wrote that, and the fact that you hadn't received a diagnosis of CPTSD yet, and all of that, it gets me really excited to read your, as you're calling it, sequel, and see how you integrate that. I'm going to assume in a similarly relatable way. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you. That's what I'm hoping. I think that is like, everybody has something that they do, that they can do. And there are a lot of things I can't do. One of the things that I can do is I seem to be able to relay information in a way that people can understand and don't feel talked down to. And that really comes from an earnest place, because I don't have a lot of formal education. So I have had to teach myself a lot of the things that I learn. And so I'm able to pass that down in a way I haven't really been told, this is how you have to write something. I learned to do a lot of that on my own. And I think that comes across thankfully fairly well most of the time. It could be a disaster. I mean, who knows, right? But I think also as a writer, you have to know your place. Like, I am clearly not a therapist, and that is going to come across very clearly in the work too. I'm going to state over and over, big disclaimer, I am not a mental health professional. And as somebody who's not a mental health professional, you really don't want to just follow my advice, right? Like, you really want to be able, if you find relatability in this, it's a really good idea to go talk to a professional who knows you and figure out what to do about that, right? So that's an important part, I think, as a writer. You relay information you learn, and you feed it to people. You sort of give it to people to internalize if they want to internalize it. But yeah, I'm not an expert in that field.
Oh man, I have so many comments, but I wanted to open it up to anybody who wanted to share a comment or start a discussion around a certain part of the book or Amanda's story. Anybody?
I have a question. Hi, I'm Diana. I'm Milana's mom, actually.
Aww. You're in the same house, but on different. Oh, I love this.
No, not in the same house.
Okay.
But I thought you're in the town.
Okay, perfect. Oh yeah. Oh, right. Over there is in that on your screen because you're up there too. Yeah. Okay. I literally thought you meant another room, and I was like, oh, that's really cute that you're joining from the same house in different rooms.
I wish.
That's too funny. I was just wondering, when you've built a following with your Maven of Mayhem social media following, and I'm sorry if my internet cuts out and I'm frozen here. I'm going to try to get this out. I was wondering, did you struggle with the idea of making this public as well? And at any point, did you decide you would want to pull away from social media and not let the rest of the world know what you were going through in your family?
Oh yeah, consider that a lot. That was actually the first thing I wanted to do. And it was actually Alexis who really pushed me to reconsider that. And as my job, so for those who don't know now, Alexis, when I wrote the book, identified as a trans girl. So the pronouns for the book are she, her. But in 2014, Alexis did not know about non-binary identities. And so more recently has said, I identify as non-binary. That fits me a lot better. They, them, please. So you'll hear me use they, them pronouns. So Alexis really felt like when they went looking for supportive families, it was really, really hard to find stories back then. It wasn't that long ago, but I think in terms of trans rights and representation, especially in a family setting and especially with young people, it might as well have been a century ago. And there really wasn't a lot. What they found were a lot of stories of people who thought their parents would be supportive and then came out to them and then were kicked out of the house or told absolutely not, or we're not talking to you anymore, or you're going to conversion therapy. I mean, that sort of thing was happening. So they felt it was really important that we become a source of positivity, that we could show people, because I guess once they realized that we were really on board and we were going to learn and figure this out, that we were going to be we could be an example. And so we gave it a lot of thought. We had so many talks in our family about this. Initially, actually, I used pseudonyms for everyone in the family. And it was only until CBC asked to do a piece on us that we decided to use our real names. But that was a big discussion in itself. I mean, privacy it's funny because if you read the book or if you know me online, it sounds like I talk about everything. Like, it really sounds like I just put it all out there and there's no boundaries. That's not true at all. There's actually a lot that we don't talk about, that we have decided not to share, for privacy reasons, or because it's more sensational than it is helpful, or at some point that might be information that somebody wishes they hadn't shared. So we were very, very careful, but thankfully we're still able to tell a very authentic story. So yeah, a lot of consideration went into it. It's a question I get asked a lot, and it's such a good and important question. It's one of those things I talk to a lot. With newer families whose kids, say come out as teenagers and they're like, yeah, I want to be public. And I'm like, let's have a chat about that, because there's some things that you're not going to know. There are a lot of risks to going public. We are up on hate websites. People have tried to dox us to find out like where we live, what school. People have found out what schools my children have gone to, have sent threats to the schools. We've had to get added security at the schools. We've had to file police reports, and this hasn't happened in a long time, but it did happen. It could happen again. And so, yeah, I do think privacy is a really important thing. I'm not necessarily saying that we would do it differently. I think in part because we have a lot of privilege. We're a family with a lot of privilege, really good support, security, that sort of thing. And so by that, I mean like communal security, not like actual security guards, but like we have a lot of support and connections and that sort of thing. So I feel like we're relatively safe, but I have heard far worse stories. So yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective, because I think we all just kind of get lost in the narrative of your book and forget that there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes that we can only imagine adds to the complexity of the situation and having to make these incredibly hard decisions. I had these thoughts multiple times through the book at a lot of the climax points where, okay, I'm just making a big decision for my family. Did you feel brave in those moments? Because I felt that you were incredibly brave. What did it feel like? Were you more afraid, or were you thinking, nope, now it's time to step up into this role and assume this alter ego and be strong for the family? Or was it more of a fearful experience for you to make these announcements public?
Yeah, no, it was all fear.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, that's normal.
Like, I mean, I'd like to say that I was like really, strong and, ready to handle everything. And no, I mean, I think it's just, I'm very fortunate to know a lot of really strong women in my life who have led by example, my mom being one of them. And I talk about her in the book. My youngest brother has Down syndrome. When she was pregnant with him, she found out and got a lot of pressure from everybody telling her what she should do, what his life was going to be like, and painting this really grim picture. My mom was like, absolutely not. I love this child. We're going to have this child and we're going to raise him and he's going to have the best life he can have. And he is doing super well. He works for a senator on Parliament Hill. He has for years. He knows everybody. He's like the most popular person there. He's an awesome guy. He's doing so well in his life. He's so happy. He's got a lovely girlfriend. I mean, he's thriving, right? But he is thriving because my mom never gave up on him. She was always like, and my dad too, but my mom really took that role. And then a very good friend of mine has had, unfortunately, 2 children with cancer. One has passed away. One is still fighting cancer, and she's a warrior mom. And it's like what I learned from both of those women is that you don't have a choice. Like, it's not an option. These are your children. So nobody's ready for it. Nobody knows what they're doing. You do it not because you're necessarily strong, but because you have to figure it out. That's what we do. So that's what I did at every turn is I just said, well, we're going to have to figure this out. Okay, this is a scary situation, or this is an unknown. What do we do? And we just figure it out. So that's it. No kudos to me. Honestly, I just I was winging it the whole time. Honestly, just winging it.
Have decisions, right? I mean, it was just the decision you made was a brave decision, and you may not have felt brave as you were making it, but it was still a decision, right? You could have, not said anything. You could have not gone public. And then you could have also not been supportive of these changes within your family. So these were all choices. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that truth about how you felt in those moments, because that's the most relatable part for me. And I want to say like my life is so simple compared to the trials that you've gone through. But I think we can all relate to being in that position of having to make a life shattering decision, and then embracing, leaning into the fear, knowing that it's the right thing to do in the core of our being, and not questioning that direction. But yeah, that gives me strength, gives me a little bit of strength to read that you were, rightfully terrified, but you made the decision anyway, and it was the right one. So I think
we just grow. We grow as people. I mean, that's what these trials are all about, right? I mean, nobody necessarily wants them to happen, whatever they might be. We get used to the way life is. In a lot of ways, I was living a very privileged life, where we just kind of flew under the radar, and we were just, we could live anywhere, go anywhere, be around anyone pretty much, and just and be invisible. And there's a lot of, I didn't realize how good that was for my peace of mind until I didn't have it anymore. Right. And then I was like, whoa, right. It's like, okay, now we really have to think this through. But yeah, I mean, it just is, it is a growing and learning process. And that's one of the reasons I try to be really upfront with all of my thoughts and feelings and mistakes, my errors. I really put them out there in the book, because I wanted people to see that love is not a perfect thing. It is very imperfect. We do the best we can with what we have at the time. Then we learn better, and then we do better. And that's all you can do. That's the whole thing. That's the whole secret to loving someone. And so I just sort of was like, here are all my mistakes. Let's hope that you don't make some of them, because you get to read from me. You can learn from me. You're going to make your own mistakes, whatever it is you got going on. And then you just, learn from them, pick everything up, and keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Would anyone else like to offer a comment or a question? Okay. Oh, Erin?
Hello. I absolutely loved your book. I know we've talked about it before, being relatable, and just even from the beginning, when you talk about how you were brought up and your changes over the book, and even now reading your blog, how much you've changed and grown. We feel like we've grown with you. And I think anyone that reads it can probably find a piece of themselves, like where it really makes us feel all connected. And I really enjoyed that. So I'm an educator and a friend and all those other things. But from that side of stuff, through Alexis's transition, I know there was a horrible principal, there was a great teacher. What makes someone great? How can I be that great person? How can I be that ally?
Oh, what makes that? Honestly, I think what makes somebody great is two things: an open mind and a willingness to learn and grow. Right. It doesn't mean that you know everything right off the bat. I think being an educator, one, really important job, and two, really, really hard job. And you are trying to meet the needs of all of these different kids every single year, who are all going through their own changes, and their families are going through changes. And oh my goodness, hats off to you. And so I just think that listening is a really important skill. And I think that being willing to grow, it's really easy to bring our own opinions into things, and our own our own ideas of what the world is. And then when those get challenged, I think the good educators, I'm not an educator, so I feel kind of weird saying that, but I think that the good educators are the ones who don't immediately put up a wall and go, tell me more about that, or I want to learn more about that. I'm going to go home and learn more about that, or I'm going to ask somebody about that. And I mean, I think the other thing is just no assumptions. That is one of the things that I've worked on really hard. I never assume people's gender, ever. Immediately my brain will look at someone, and my brain, because it's conditioned to, will think that's a man or that's a woman. But I've become much better at not assigning labels to people. And I let people tell me who they are. And there are a lot of ways you can do that. for one of the things that, when I'm talking to educators and doing workshops and that sort of thing, I'll say, and this has become more mainstream now, but I remember the first few times I brought up, a lot of people say, hey, boys and girls, right? Well, you don't know if everyone in the class is a boy or a girl, right? You don't know that. And you don't know which ones are boys and which ones are girls. I mean, you can have an idea, but you don't know for sure. And so I think like just letting kids, just saying, hey, everyone, hey, team, hey, friends, hey, whoever, right? Hey, class, that is really validating just because you've got a little kid like Alexis sitting in that class who's like, I don't really feel like a boy, but you're assuming I'm a boy and everyone's telling me I'm a boy and my parents think I'm a boy and I guess I must be a boy, but that does not feel good. And that internal turmoil causes so many issues and a lot of mental health strain on a lot of kids and everything. So yeah, I just think being open-minded, present. So it was actually a VP who I talked to.
Right. Yes.
People ended up being amazing. The VP was who was in the office at the time. I just was very careful about what I was saying in the book. But yeah, she ended up being a fabulous ally, but her immediate reactions were horrible. And that left me, who was a mama bear who was really, hadn't realized she was a mama bear yet, but like, I was very scared for my child. I was very, very scared. And she basically showed me, she mirrored to me her own fear, her own concerns, she showed everything out on the table to me. And then that terrified me, like, because I was like, oh no, the worst case scenario just happened. We don't have support at the school. Now what? Right. So yeah.
I think I wanted to also say, like you talked about not making assumptions. And right now I'm a supply teacher, so I'm in classes all the time and I really don't know the kids at all. And I've been working on not making those assumptions. Like every time I do, I'm like, oh, Erin, like next time you be more careful. So your message and your book and just the whole change that we're coming to, it's happening. It's there. It's going on. I see it in classrooms all the time. And so thank you, because it's happening. It's going on.
I love it. It's a work of so many different people. I think I'm just like one little piece and my family's like one little piece in this puzzle. There have been trans people who have been screaming this from the rooftops for a really long time. And for a long time, they were not heard. And that's really unfortunate because trans people should always be leading these conversations. They know themselves better than anyone else. But with the support of parents and with the support of partners, and we sort of help, I think, become a bridge for other cisgender people to be able to go, okay, I think I kind of understand it a little better now because I'm seeing it through your perspective. And now I'm ready to go and learn from a trans person where maybe I wasn't ready before. Maybe that was just seemed too big of a leap for me before. And so that's what I find my role is. And my family's role is overall is we just sort of provide that family, mother or parent, partner bridge.
For sure. Like all the trans people in my life were adults and I'd only known them as adults. So the child side and hearing what Alexis went through and how she was feeling, even just in the classroom, I was like, oh, I'm there. I can help that. I can do something about that. That was really good and inspiring.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. That makes me really happy. I think I get the giddiest when I hear from educators because I know how important your role is. I know that like I had one amazing, if you bother to read the acknowledgements in the back, I'll sidestep for a minute. I had this amazing teacher in grade 10. So I was Zoe and I were living in an apartment in the market. We were just really struggling financially. She was going to college. I was just trying to finish up high school. She had just started college. And I wanted to take this English writing course and it was only offered at 2 places. And one of them was a school that was like an hour and a half bus ride away. And I applied to go there and they let me go there. The board let me go there and I bussed every day. And this teacher was, I mean, I was really rough. Like I was angry. I had a chip on my shoulder. I was like legally emancipated at that point. I had been through hell. And she pulled me aside after class, the first class. She's like, Amanda, can I see you after class? I was like, oh, great. Because I know what this means. Right. And she's like, did you know you couldn't write? did you know, like, you're a writer, you are a writer, like, and she just mentored me the whole year. Anyway, Joyce Waglin and I are still very good friends. We have kept in contact this whole time. She came to my book launch, and she actually came back to Ottawa for my book launch. And we've, she's just one of the most important people to me. And so a really good educator can change the world. I don't know if I would be a writer today if it wasn't for Joyce. So I dedicated part of the book to her.
That's amazing. And that's why we do it. That's absolutely why we do it. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Oh my gosh. I got teary-eyed there.
Me
I have to
too.
try not to cry. I have to try not to cry when I talk about Joyce.
I think it's okay. It's
yeah,
okay.
I had to start calling her Joyce about 10 years ago. She told me I wasn't allowed to call her Mrs. Wagland anymore. That was it.
Man, I run a martial arts gym with my husband and another business partner, and we teach a lot of kids. And we have a local woman who wants her daughter to join because she is trans and she's been having a really hard time fitting into traditional team-based sports, given that you have to be placed on a gendered team. And her struggle is so specific. And what a challenge to be rejected from both genders, essentially saying, well, you don't belong here because you weren't born a girl, and you don't belong here because you identify as a girl. So I really feel for her, and I'm trying to build confidence in the mom that she'll be safe in our gym. But I could take any pointers at all from the instructor standpoint on like how to make her feel more comfortable in our classes in our gym, when it's a sport, but it's individual sport. Like we don't just, you don't like get separated by your gender. Like everyone's pretty much on the same playing field. Luckily, we don't even get to use our change rooms right now. So there's not even a separation there, and it's a single unisex bathroom. So I'm in that headspace now where I'm trying to troubleshoot all these potential scenarios that could single her out or make her feel uncomfortable. Any pointers at all from that experience that I could keep in mind would be so helpful.
So I mean, yeah, I'm sure a trans person would have like a ton of pointers for you. I'm just trying to think of the trans people that I know. And I think really just being treated like everyone else is the most important thing. I remember when Alexis joined the gym with me, and it was just like, I was a little nervous because her health card still had an M on, or sorry, their health card still had an M on it. And I wasn't sure how they were going to be treated there. And it was just no big deal. It was just like, yeah, okay, so these are the change rooms. And at the time, again, they identified as a girl, and they're like, so this is where you'll get changed. And like it was just, and inside the change rooms there were also individual stalls. It just wasn't brought up.
Mm-hmm.
It was just sort of like, because I'm sure that if they wanted to use those, they could go use those. And it just was like a non-issue, even though the person showing us around knew that they were trans. I think that's like the biggest thing, is just that inclusion, like in your mind, solidify in your mind, that this is a girl. She has always been a girl, even if other people around her didn't know that yet. And really internalize this is who she is. And if you really internalize it, you will treat her that way. Yeah. And you will not tolerate when other people don't treat her that way. And I think that is the biggest thing. And I love individual sport. Like that's all I do. I do a lot of like cardio boxing and HIIT workouts and weightlifting and that sort of thing. And like, to me, it's so empowering. So I really hope that, she's going to feel that confidence and that change. I'm like rooting for her in my head now. That's wonderful.
I just want her to get in the door and feel the sense of welcome and family that we've built. And we're starting to talk really seriously to our older kids group, which is ages 9 to 12, about bullying and different types of bullying. And we've been doing this since day one, but now we actually have a curriculum that we follow. So every week is a different bullying topic. And,
Wow.
you know, for instance, this week it's cyberbullying. And what does that look like? What can that look like? How can that feel? And then how do you deal with it? And then how do you know if you're a cyberbully, right? Like, how do you check yourself? But I do want to bring up, you know, bullying in a gendered sense. And so how do you, you know, I just want, I don't know how early is too young to prime these kids for how to accept somebody who doesn't identify as a boy or a girl or is transgendered. You know, I don't know.
I find overall, here's the thing. I find overall, the kids are never the issue or rarely the issue. They can be the issue, but it's almost always the adults. The adults have the issue. The kids are all right. And it's not that it doesn't happen, because again, Alexis dealt with bullying in school, some pretty nasty Instagram comments from classmates. Zoe had to go talk to some of the parents where the kids are, you know, were being particularly horrible and using a lot of slurs and stuff. And, but, oh, you know, overall, it tends to be the parents. If you empower the kids, especially if you just teach them to respect people. Like I think overall, I think kids overall really just want to fit in, right? They just want to fit in. And if they fit in by being anti-bullying, if that's how they fit in, then that they're going to go that way, right? I think sometimes kids feel like they have to fit in by bullying. If that is just off the table, because what you are really preaching to the kids is like, inclusion here means that we respect everybody. I think that's really going to help. But
Yes.
yeah, I love the work you're doing. That's amazing. I think it's wonderful. It's so formative, and I think it's really going to help a lot of kids, and you never know where those ripple effects are going to go, how that makes a difference. Fantastic.
Yeah, come by sometime. We love
love
that.
to. Love to.
Boss Thai boxing in Kenville.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, no, seriously, I'm there.
Yeah, we got a good kids group, man. They're awesome. We just talked today, like I said, about cyberbullying, and they were on fire. The hands are shooting up. They just had so many things they wanted to talk about, and we hardly got any work in. Maybe that's their strategy. Just keep talking.
Yeah, totally. That's amazing, because I
Yeah.
think that, like, I mean, cyberbullying is really the new bullying. Like, when I got bullied at school, when I got home, I could just close the door and then I would not get bullied anymore until the next day. And that is not the case. When I had my breakdown last year, I got massively piled on Twitter,
Mm.
and the hate and I mean, there was some like constructive criticism, which is what always happens, right? There was like some constructive criticism, and then the hate happened, right? It was like this like huge pile-on, and it was a lot of personal attacks and a lot of like, you know, I had emails from people saying like, go kill yourself, you know, things like that. You know, you deserve everything you're getting, you know, just a lot of really horrible things. And I couldn't turn it off, right? Like, it's like it found me everywhere. When I deactivated my Twitter account, it found me on Instagram, it found me on Facebook, it found me through my website. And I'm an adult, and I had a breakdown, right? And a lot of that was the trauma that I dealt with as a kid, but I mean, that was coming back. But like, I really feel for kids who haven't learned that you can get through this stuff yet, who haven't experienced it, and experience is massive. I really feel for them. So yeah, thank you for doing that work. It's really important.
Oh man, I just think back to everything that you've gone through. And of course, I think we've all been bullied in some way, shape, or form in some point in our lives, but it doesn't feel any easier as an adult. I know when I have a really difficult client, I had to fire a male client recently because he was so disrespectful towards me. I know it was just a sexism thing, but it hurts. It hurts just as much. You feel worthless, like you can't deal with, you know, life. And I think we just need to keep this conversation going that, yeah, trauma through bullying still happens to adults, and it's a very real thing. And that's why I don't like to get into these controversial conversations online, like to have them face to face with people who treat me like a human, because I know that it can spiral so fast. But I'm
And they
sorry
do.
that happened to you. I'm sorry that
Yeah.
happened. That wasn't fair.
It is too bad. I mean, I'm by far not the only person that has ever happened to. And I think that like, that's part of the reason I'm writing this book. I really want to talk about healthy human interactions and the importance of that in our discussions. We are forgetting one another's humanity.
Yes.
We do that with marginalized people.
Yes.
And we do that with everyone, right? We are all tearing each other down because it is so easy to do now. And we're missing so much of a person's conversation when we're only seeing text.
Yeah.
We're missing all the body language, the intonation, the facial expressions, the, everything. And so it's like, when you miss all of that, how are you able to see necessarily the person as a full person? And I think we're so quick to jump, and it's really sad. It's really sad, and it is really devastating. I have talked to 2 people in the last couple of weeks who have either attempted to or come close to attempting to harm themselves because of online bullying, and they're adults. And so I think like we really need to think about this. It's a big part of my work now, because I've just been dealing with it in one way or another since we went public as a family. So I feel like I have a lot of experience in this now, and I've got some things to say.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so important. I'm so glad for that, and I can't wait. Do you have a potential launch date for the next book, or are you still?
Oh, not yet. Not yet. No, no, there's a lot of talks going on right now. I like started the book, and then like I pulled back on the proposal, and I was like, give me a little more time. I really want to refine this. I've got this new idea that I want to do. So like I'm like at the tail end of writing like the first half of it, and then I don't know yet, but as soon as my agent and I know, I will tell you.
Oh, I'm so excited. We will be the first ones to buy a copy, I promise you. And then we'll have another book club meeting about it.
Perfect.
Does anyone else want to jump in? I feel like I've been hoarding the spotlight here.
I love to share some other, we were talking earlier about kind of tearing up, and it reminded me of some moments that I really loved in the book. I actually wrote them down, like I wrote down way too many moments where I teared up, but some of the key ones were like, I think it was Jackson said like, you know what the best thing about having 2 moms is? Everything. I was like, oh my God, I love that so much. And when her colleagues had that gorgeous like coming out party for Zoe, like, oh my gosh, the waterworks. There were so many moments. As much as your story has a lot of, ups and downs, really difficult moments, I found so much joy in so much of it. And I think you did a really good job of bringing that through, like the moments of joy and the moments of hope as well. So those were some waterworks moments.
I felt the same way. I recommended this book after reading it to a friend, and she was worried that it would be a little bit too heavy for her to read. And I said, actually, I had a lot of happy tears, like a lot of happy tears. And I said, and I think that for me, I won't say like outweighed the sad moments, but it was nice that I had those happy moments, that you're able to share those with us too. But I think I feel like this book should be a mandatory read for everyone in school. I wish that I had more of this perspective when I was younger, just in dealing with, like you said, any marginalized group, not just transgendered people. And I've told my husband, like, I feel like he should read it. I think it's important for us to understand these concepts so that we can teach our children. We have 2 very young kids, 2 under 2.
And yet you're here. I am very impressed.
And I made time to read the book.
What? You should write a book on that, honestly.
Yeah. No, and there were so many like mom moments in here where your mom is amazing and you are amazing. And I woke my husband up at night one time to say how you and Zoe handled Alexis when she told you, when she shared, that most vulnerable piece of information with you. I woke him up and I said, I know this is really simple and basic, and I hope this would be our default too, but just in case, like, these are the things they kept top of mind. Like, our child just told us something critical. you know, they're feeling very vulnerable, but we have unconditional love for them, and they need us. You know, they need our support. And I said to him, like, I hope that if we ever face a moment like that with our children, anything that's momentous, that, you know, maybe our thoughts or fears start steamrolling out of control, that I'm able to ground myself back to your words and that moment, and have like the visual of even it written out on the page to remind me, like, no, this is what's important. Like, and if you follow this, you will be there for your child. Like, you will do right by them. So thank you for that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you for telling me that really helped you. I did a book club last week, and that exact thing was brought up as well. And I'm glad it resonated with people. That was just sort of my default, because my head was spinning, right? I mean, again, we're going to go back to CPTSD, but we're going to go back to the fact that, like, me standing out and being different was my biggest fear for my own children, because it was something that really affected me. And all I wanted was just sort of like a smooth ride for them as much as possible. So when I found out that one of my kids was not going to have necessarily a smooth ride, I was so scared. And so you have to keep that. It's like, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know what was going on. And so, like, those are the really important parts, right, of parenting. It's just like having those, like, just remember, okay, what would I want my own parents to do in this situation? What would I need? I think this is what I would need. But part of what, you know, I think a lot of people who read the book, read it, you know, I hear from a lot of trans people who've read the book, and they're like, I give this to all of my cisgender family members. Like, I gifted them all this for Christmas, because it's like relatable to them, and I think they're really going to get something out of it, or learn something, or whatever. Part of what I was hoping for, which I love hearing from you, Crystal, when you say this, is I want it to be preventative. I want people to be able to read it and go, oh yeah, I right now think that my children are these genders. What if they're not, right? And am I leaving enough room for them to explore who they are? Chances are, yes, the gender that they identify as today, or that I see them as today, is the gender that they're going to be in 20 or 30 years. But I don't know that for sure. And so I need to make room and make sure that my children feel safe. Because the thing is, I thought that we were a really open-minded family that left a lot of room for things, you know, but I didn't know a lot about trans issues, and Zoe had buried her own transness, like, really deep down, right? And so, like, we didn't, I think Alexis wanted to tell us earlier, but didn't know if we were going to handle it well. And that, honestly, that hurt, because I was like, but I thought that we were really open-minded, and I thought we made that really clear. But even just having things like a handful of books where, you know, there are like some transgender themes. There's like a transgender kid in it who happens to be the protagonist, or whatever it might be. Just having that on the shelf, it's not going to make anyone trans. Just like reading about gay people isn't going to make you gay, but it is going to leave the door open, and your kids will always remember, you know, my parents are obviously cool with this because they had, you know, they taught us this stuff, and they let us know it was okay. And that's like the biggest gift we can give our kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's important for both parents to be educated in that way, which is why and my husband has said that he's happy to read it. So yeah.
Perfect. It's also on Audible or whatever too. So, like, if he's more of like a listener type, I recorded the whole thing. So that's
okay.
That's the other option. The other option is the audio.
That actually might be appealing. Yeah.
I listen to a ton of podcasts, so I'm like, I know that sometimes that's the easiest way to, you know, sitting down and reading is hard for some people.
I think as a grandma, I should maybe have some of those books too on my shelf, because sometimes, you know, sometimes the people who are going through the change, whether they're young children or teenagers, they won't necessarily go directly to their immediate family. Sometimes they'll go to a trusted aunt, or, you know, a cousin or grandma, and just drop a hint and hope that it starts the conversation going, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think having, like, I mean, ideally you want your parents to be the first person you go to. Teenagers, as you can love them just from I'm sure you know this, Diana, but like I have two 18-year-olds, a 24-year-old and a 14-year-old. I always hope they're going to come to us first with things, but that's not always the case, right? It might be a friend, or it might be a trusted relative, or it might be a mentor of some kind, or an educator or somebody. And like, I can't take that personally as a parent. I just want my kids to feel safe. So if they feel safe telling someone else first, fantastic. But yeah, leaving that door open and knowing that they have you no matter what. I mean, that's amazing. My parents and Zoe's parents have been wonderful, and my siblings have been wonderful. And because of that, Alexis has grown up like all of Alexis's issues are just typical 18-year-old issues. What am I going to do with my life? I'm really bored in lockdown, right? Like they're not like I'm really struggling with my identity or being able to be myself. Like I think that's the gift. It's like this normalcy.
Yeah. I had one more question, and it actually came up when we read our previous book, Tranny, by Laura Jane Grace.
Yep.
Because her partner was really having a lot of struggles with Laura's transition. Did you at any point feel almost like you were mourning a loss of that previous identity of your spouse and your child? Or was it more like watching a child grow up and become a new person?
Yeah, and that's a really tricky question. So I have to preface this by saying that as a general rule, what I've seen is the trans community has a real problem with people assigning grief to their feelings about a person who's still alive, and in fact usually happier and more authentic than they've ever been. So I think that's like a really important piece. I've learned a lot from trans people who've been like really, really hurt when that's been brought up. That being said, I do think that people experience feelings that are really similar to that. I think it's like, I mean, you can experience loss when you lose a job you love, right? When you're going through a divorce, when, when you have to move suddenly, you lose your home or whatever it is. So, I mean, I don't think this is different in that sense. I think it's because, but for me, I dug pretty deep. And what I realized was that like, my identity was tied into who my child was. My identity was tied into who my partner was. And that's not healthy, and it's not fair to put on them, right? So I had this whole identity surrounded and that I was a mom to 3 boys. I was a mom to all boys, right? I was like, I'm in a club, it's cool, right? Like and because I had that identity, when I found out that that actually wasn't true, I did feel a loss there. Like I did feel like, oh, what does that mean? And I had to recalibrate. So I call it a letting go, because it really was just a letting go. It was a letting go of this idea of who I thought my child was. And I needed to do that so I could make space for who they really are. And it's easier the second time when they came out as non-binary. I was like, oh, okay, so you're just kind of like just attaching like a different, you're like refining. Okay, I get that. So it was like a very different feeling. But and when Zoe came out, it was similar. I think what I was dealing with, the hardest thing for me was recognizing that, like when Alexis transitioned, it didn't really change much in our family, because if people met us on the street, they would still see what looked like a mom and a dad and like 3 kids. Didn't really matter what the gender of the kids were, right? When Zoe came out, then because I've always known I was gay, and I was really coming to terms with that, and I had known for a long time, and I was really, really like suppressing it. But my big fear, you'd think that I would be thrilled, and I ended up being thrilled, but I had to get through the fear first. And the fear was, oh no, how is this going to affect how we're perceived by everyone in the world, right? And things change. Like I have noticed the loss of privilege there. Like I have gone to have my hair done or something, and I've had people go, "Oh, so are you married?" And I say, "Yeah." "Oh, what does your husband do?" Right? In that moment, I now have to say, I have to correct. And I say, "Oh, my wife actually." And then there's like, usually it's fine, but there's like a pause sometimes while people process it. And when that happens, it's like, what are they thinking? Is the mood going to change? Right? How is this person going to treat me now? How do they feel about gay people? Right? How, like, so it changes everything. And there's a certain level of safety that has been removed. So I think I had to deal with that. That was, I think, the hardest part is like our family now, like our kids, major thing was the kids. I was like, are the kids going to get bullied at school? Are the kids' friends going to stop wanting their kids to come over? Are like, there was a lot of, not, that didn't happen at all, but I was really worried about it. So yeah, long-winded way of saying, yes, I had to let go of my own perceptions to welcome in what was actually happening. And that was a really good thing for me to do. And I'm glad I did it.
It's amazing the impact that your story and your continued speaking and social media will have, I'm sure. But as you're speaking, I'm starting to think of certain situations that I've encountered recently, and I'm like, oh boy, we have so much to do. Because I worked on a team of proposal writers for a staffing agency, and our manager was from a different culture. And she really liked this new writer I brought on the team until I noticed the shift the same day that writer mentioned her wife. And then another day, I just kind of let it go. But then another day, we had some team members allowing their spouses and partners who were coming to join them after work to join us for a glass of wine or a cocktail on Friday after 5. And in the office, and one man, he seems like a boy because he was very young, had a male friend join him. And afterwards, my manager said, well, that's not right. We're not just inviting our friends over. It's only spouses and partners who are allowed. And I said, well, maybe that is his spouse or his partner. And are you going to go and ask him? Or are you just going to open it up and forget this silly rule? So, you know, you think that you're in a progressive workplace that's celebrating all kinds of modern accessibility and openness and acceptance, and you're like, ugh. But yeah, we have a lot of educating to do.
Yeah, sometimes it's just, it really is just exposure, right? And that's that, I take that role very seriously. And that's, I sort of like, I sort of jokingly say like, we're exposure therapy, right?
Yeah.
When you're afraid of heights and like you slowly make your way up a tower, right? Like a little bit at a time. Well, the thing about us is like, we're a queer family, but in a lot of ways, we're like a really boring, no offense to anyone who lives a life like mine, but a very boring average family. We live on a very nondescript street. I garden and wave to all the neighbors, you know, like we're just, you know, our kids, like we drive our kids to school. We got like the carpool thing going, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's so typical. And I think that might lessen the fear of the unknown a little bit. So people will, that's why I'm so present on social media, except for right now, because I'm taking a really awesome break to do some writing. But yeah, it's day 9 right now. Let me tell you, it's the longest I've been on social media for a long time, and it feels really good. But yeah, like it is so important that like, that there's a level of visibility that is non-threatening. And then once you sort of see that there's nothing to be afraid of, a lot of this is fear driven. Once you see a lot of it is, you know, that maybe you need to unlearn some old ideas, let go of some fear, understand that I am a super dull person. then that will make your life a little easier for the next, make life a little easier for the next person that you encounter. So that's always the goal, is you literally do just change the world one story at a time, one interaction at a time, one instance at a time. And so we all do our part a little bit, and it gets easier for the next people.
So good. I got all the good feels now. I'm all ramped up, ready to go. This is awesome. This is so good. I love these conversations because especially for someone, I don't personally have a relationship with anyone who's transgendered, but I look forward to it, and I look forward to learning, and through books like yours, getting every angle and getting all the experiences secondhand. It's certainly helpful in priming myself for that day when it comes, to just like not freak out and like be worried I'll say the wrong thing, but be like, this is cool. I got this. But I really appreciate everything that you said, and I think you spoke to each one of us in an individual way today, and what we've read through your book is just life-changing, truly life-changing. So thank you so much for being here, Amanda, for making the space in your heart and your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, and honestly for taking the time to read, because here's the thing, you didn't have to, right? Especially if you don't have a trans loved one, you didn't have to take the time to read this book, but you did. And now you know a little more, and now you can go off and do a little better. And it opens the door to learning more and doing more. I just think that's amazing. So I thank you. You did the hard work, not me. And if you have any questions, comments, need anything else, please feel free to reach out to me. Just get in touch with me. Seriously, I'm usually pretty easy to get in touch with.
Thank you, Amanda. We appreciate
Thank you
that.
so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
And all of us. Thank you so much.
Have
Okay.
a great night. Have a great
let
night,
you go
everybody.
now.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.